Welcome to Entrepreneur, a podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders doing business and life God's way. Each week, we discuss biblical and practical tips to improve your mind, business, spirit, relationships, and finances. Listen along as I speak with special guests on how to thrive in all aspects of life. Hi, I'm Edna. Like many of you, I wear many hats. I'm a military wife, mother, author, certified John Maxwell business and executive coach, trainer, and founder of Favor and Wealth, where we help the good guys win. So tune in as we bring on the light.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Entrepreneur Podcast, where we highlight men and women of God doing business God's way. As I mentioned, these past two seasons, it has been a shift in the type of episodes. Normally, we have guests, but because of my busy schedule and my husband's current assignment, where he's always traveling, I am holding the fort down with me and the two girls. And so, we are doing just episodes of where I teach from the Word of God as far as strategies for a business. And today is no exception. Today, we're going to discuss the challenges that businesses face, small businesses face when they're growing. And so, we're going to talk about the 5 things that typical small businesses face when they're basically going beyond the startup phase and now in the process of really scaling and accelerating their growth. And so, for those of you guys new, my name is Edna. I am your host, Estherpreneur Podcast, which you're listening to. And I have been, working with businesses all over the world for many, many years. I started out in corporate America and grew businesses globally, and that was my task, was to grow it in different markets all over the world, across various industries, from IT solutions, engineered systems, to supply chain, like logistics wise. I've done financial services, I've done, retail. I've done all kinds of fun stuff. And I share all of this because just understand that that was my task, was growing businesses globally on a grander scale. And I shift my focus to helping startups and small businesses when I left my corporate job in 2016 and I started working with struggling businesses specifically. That's when I created my programs, the Battle to Booming programs, where I help people who are in the midst of a battle or struggling in their businesses to grow, whether if it's team engagement, team performance, or financial, sales wise, um, or even just coming up with new ideas and new services. That's where I started doing the bulk of my coaching programs and my training programs on. So I've heard a lot of stories and I've talked to lots of different people from all walks of life, different demographics, different parts of the world, different parts, different companies, different types of businesses. And I saw some commonality when it comes to the typical challenges they face. And so today we're going to talk about those. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Now, understand that this podcast is always going to have both practical and biblical strategies to help you reach a certain goal or expand or grow. So, if that's not your cup of tea, feel free to sign off now. If it is, or you're interested in hearing this different perspective, keep listening, okay? Okay. So the first challenge that I find whenever I'm working with businesses who are growing all of a sudden is managing cash flow. Proverbs 21:5 says that the plans of the diligent leads to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Now, this speaks the importance of careful planning and managing your finances, okay? You know, it's so essential, especially as you grow exponentially, that you keep tabs of your pennies, right? You keep tabs of where your cash is going. Because what I found is a lot of people, all of a sudden, once they start growing, they start money flowing in, they start spending. And because I think that money is going to keep flowing in, because what I found is most businesses, it's cyclical, right? So you have seasons of abundance and seasons of, I don't like saying of brokenness, but basically seasons where it's a bit of a challenge, right, financially. And so when you expect that, you start planning for that. So it's important for you to forecast your cash flow, knowing that at any given time, things can change dramatically, right? So this is when you learn how to steward your resources well. You steward your time well, you steward your money well, you steward your talent well. Understand that there is different trends, right? That it's part of business, right? It's ups and downs. It's never a straight line. And you got to be careful if you see that, oh my gosh, like I'm going to keep spending, and you start spending more than you are already taking because you're thinking that it's going to continue to grow. There is a right balance though. You have to have discernment and you have to ask wisdom from God. When is the right time to spend? So for example, for me, whenever I'm investing in a program that's going to help me save time, save money, make money, and this could be anything from software, um, um, a coach who's an expert in what I'm trying to accomplish. It could cut myself time, or even outsourcing it to a resource that does that specific thing. This is still managing your cash flow well, even though it's not so much about not spending money, but it's more about making sure that the money that you're spending will be worth it in the long run, right? Because you got to have that buffer, right? So, and you got to like count your costs, right? Are you willing? Okay, you'll invest the time in the front end, and then you'll um save money in the back end, right? Or you could invest money right now and save time in the back end, and it's vice versa. I hope I'm making sense. So managing cash flow is huge, and um that's really what I've seen a lot of people miss. They spend money on, for example, they spend money on advertisements and all of these different things, whether if it's digital marketing or on newspapers or a call center advertising their business. Um, they spend this money, and yet their internal systems is still broken, meaning, once the lead is captured, there's no system in place to capture that lead and ensure that that lead goes from lead to sale, right? So there's no funnels, there's no email funnels, there's no follow-up systems for their teams. They get all these leads, but it falls to the wayside because there's no program in place to, you know, bring bring that lead into a close deal, if that makes sense. Okay. Um, and that could be not just a system, but also your people are not prepared. So I remember, my goal at one time was like, let me just get the phones ringing. And I remember people were calling left and right, the inside sales team at my company, because I was just really like out there, and the inside sales teams couldn't close, anything. Like they couldn't bring them to that sale, if that makes sense, or to that next step. And so that's what I mean by making sure that that if you are spending money on things that's supposed to bring you new leads, or spending all this money on advertisements, that you have systems in place to ensure that when those things start coming, that you can optimize that the results that you're getting from the thing that you're spending on. Okay. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, reach out to me, okay? The second thing, I don't want this episode to be really long. The second thing I wanted to talk about is about scaling your team, okay? So as you grow, you got to hire more people. Ephesians 4:16 says that each part of the body plays a role in the body, right? So essentially what I'm saying is that every person, every role who's supposed to be part of your team plays a huge part in ensuring the success of your business, which means that you need to start finding the right team members, not only when you're just starting out, but even as you grow. Because what I found is a lot of times the owners, especially as you grow, you outsource it to your, your managers, your executives and stuff like that. And a lot of times, you know, for I've seen many times, many reasons. So one thing they'll do is they'll hire the people just to fill in the seats, just so they could get off their task list. Other people, they hire people who are friends of friends or relatives or someone who knows someone, and just because, they want to do someone a favor. And sometimes you hire people who um who may be the same alma mater as you, stuff like that. And what happens is the quality of the service or the quality of the team starts to fade. And so this is my big caution to those who are growing, is that if you're not doing the hiring, ensure that you're very clear on the type of individuals and expectations you have as far as who they bring on board. And there should be consequences if those things are not met. um I can't say time and time again how people left, really, I mean, really good people left companies because they were, their bosses were not very good to them. I don't want to say the other word, but I just wanted to say that this is really, really huge. Scaling your team the right way when you're growing needs to be something that you need to address up front. In fact, if you are not, I understand if you have thousands of employees, it's going to be hard for you to meet every single person that join. But if they are, if you're still small, I would say less than 50 or even less than 100, that people that you bring in, even if it's just a minute or 5 minutes, get to know whoever is going to be working with you at the desk level or even, in the warehouse, and just get to know them, find out a little bit about them, who they are, introduce yourself. So you start building those relationships with every single employee. And if you're not able to do that, then make sure that your leaders are doing that, because I can't tell you how much difference it makes when you guys are connected and when your people feel like you care about them, and that when you are playing a part in hiring the right people, because you know the vision for the company, okay, more than a lot of your employees do. You know the values of your company. You know what it is that you want, the type of environment you want to create. I mean, at least you should if you're the owner. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to start digging and asking yourself, okay, what do I want this to look like? And if I look at my current people, are these the type of people I want to be part of that environment? Okay. All right. So, the third thing I wanted to talk about is maintaining quality. Okay. As you grow, service quality, a lot the products, all that stuff, sometimes it starts to diminish because you can't keep up with demand. So Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work it all with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So this is basically essentially how I read this. It's saying that your product and your service quality has to remain high even during expansion. Okay. I can't tell you how many times, these companies I've seen, especially, those products that in the beginning, what was that? Oh gosh, what was it called? It was like some sort of makeup that this Bare Essentials. Yeah, Bare Essentials. It first came out, it was really, really good. And then as they grew bigger, bigger, bigger and expanded, and all of a sudden I noticed that the quality of the makeup isn't that good. Now, I've tried multiple times to make sure it was just the one, but I could tell the difference that the quality isn't that good. So a lot of times as companies scales, they tend to go cheap because they're like, okay, I'm mass production, let me save some money. And so they lower the quality of the service or quality of the product. And in return, your customers are going to start noticing it, at least those loyal customers. And so that's going to affect your sales in the long run. So don't be cheap. Make sure that the quality of the service is there. If you guys are growing and expanding, right, and you see that your customer service team isn't keeping up with the demand and they're like stressed out, hire more people. In the long run, it's going to help you, right? So for example, for me, an example for me that I could think of is when I want to improve the quality of my service or the quality of my coaching, the quality of my product, I I know it takes money to invest in resources, softwares, tools, even a person, a coach to coach me to help enlarge the capacity and increase my lid and ensure that I am able to provide the best advice, the best training out there. And so in order for me to keep up with the demand as my businesses grow and as I get more clientele and as I work with more different circumstances, because I notice, and as you guys know, as I mentioned before, I work with all types of individuals. I work in different types of organizations. I work with big companies or Fortune 500 companies, but then I've also worked with startup entrepreneurs who are still doing this on the side while they're working for corporate America. I've even worked with inmates, those who were in prison, and they were developing a business plan while they were in prison. My point is, like, as I engage with different types of customers, I have to keep broadening my mind, increasing my technology, increasing the my knowledge, and ensuring that I am able to ensure that the quality level of my service doesn't fade as I continue to build on my business and increase my clients. Okay, the number of my clients. Sorry. All right. So, one way to do this, thank you, Elise Bear, I totally forgot about that, is standardized operations, SOPs, right? Having a procedure. That's why I'm really big on systems where I automate a lot of my processes so that there's no confusion. And so what I found with a lot of businesses is they tend to, and this is both small and large, they tend to just share what their expectations are to the employees, and then they get upset that it's not being met when I ask them, well, has it been documented? Do you have procedures in place, written procedures in place for you to look through and ensure that things are being followed, and so that they have some sort of guidelines? Because a lot of people don't remember what you tell them. You literally have to tell them 40 times from a scientific standpoint before they could actually really grasp everything. So unless you're willing to speak to them 40 times, I suggest you go ahead and write it down and create that SOP, even though it is more cumbersome in the beginning, because you're going to have to, it's going to take time out of your day. The easier it is. And one thing that you can do is that now there's technology where you could like Cast Magic is one where you could dictate and then it'll write it out for you. So you could just speak into a microphone and it'll write it out for you, and then you go to Chat GPT and ask it to summarize those what the procedures and expectations are. Okay, so there's ways to save time, but in the long run, please, 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 especially if you're growing, have SOPs in place. Okay. Even if you're not growing yet, even if you're just starting out, you don't have employees and you don't have, that many clients, this is the perfect time for you to write an SOP, your expectations and your procedures. I did that before I even had a team. This is many years ago. Before I hired my 3 people, I created an SOP, what my expectations for them, how I wanted them to answer the phone, how I wanted them to qualify the leads, how I wanted them to organize my desk, how I wanted, like, stuff like that. That will help you immensely. Okay. All right. The fourth thing I wanted to talk about as you grow is facing tougher competition. Okay. As you grow, you're going to have more competition because that's part of growth, right? So I want to encourage you because, with David and Goliath, right? I know this has nothing to do with business, but I look at it as it absolutely does. There were so many times where I competed against the big boys, right? Big consultants. I mean, I just got out of corporate America. I was competing with, established consulting firms who's been around for a long time. And the way I differentiated myself was utilizing innovative strategies through the Word of God, but also technology and software that helps you think outside the box. Because what I found is if you help them using stuff that it's no longer relevant or stuff that they've heard before, it's not going to make you really stand out. It's going to make you sound like everybody else, which is why I like using biblical strategies, because a lot of people don't really use biblical strategies. I haven't met anybody yet. I mean, what I found is for a lot of Christian business coaches, they call themselves, they're using biblical strategies, but it's just basically incorporating faith into your business. That's not what I do. Is I actually get strategies from stories from the Bible in how to grow your business, run your business, and deal with challenges in life and in business. So it's amazing to me, that's been my differentiator. And so you got to find out for yourself, what is my differentiator, what are my unique strengths, and then and hold on that advantage, identify what that is. So one thing about me is I am a creator. I love to create stuff from scratch. Like, I like to get ideas from existing products or existing theories or existing technology, and I like to challenge it. I like to learn and grow and go beyond, what I see in the natural. I like to prove myself wrong, just put it that way, or prove other people wrong, but mostly prove myself wrong when I because I want to, like, for example, if I like one example that I could think of is a while back, and now people are talking about this, because which is crazy. I don't know when the blue ocean theory came out, or that book about blue ocean, but back then, and for those of you guys who are following me on my YouTube channel, I mentioned this. This was like back in 2016. This was 7 years ago, where I was talking about the Lord gave me a strategy from the lost sheep, where it says, where he said, he went after the one, left the masses, went after the one. And so what the Lord told me to do is, instead of going after the masses, look for the one. So I looked where no one else was looking. So while everyone was focusing on businesses that were thriving, trying to get into the ones that have money, I started focusing on struggling businesses, those that couldn't afford me, those that couldn't, really have access to that type of high level consulting because of lack of funds or lack of time and everything. And I focused on that. And now, did I make my money off of that? No, I did not make my money off of that. But I did learn that the strategies of God works in those undeniably terrible, traumatic situations. And I tested the strategies of God on businesses that were struggling, and it worked. They were able to succeed. They were able to thrive in spite of huge opposition. They were able to compete with the big boys. And when I say thrive, maybe you're thinking like, oh, I don't see them. They're not multimillionaires on the Forbes 500 company, list, whatever. Fortune 100, I'm sorry, Fortune 100 company list. But I can tell you this, that to me, thriving is not necessarily getting all recognized and awarded, but they were finally in a position of peace. They're finally in a position of joy. They're finally seeing the fruits of their labor. They're finally, saying like, oh my gosh, I have clarity. I know where to take my business. I know how to grow my business. I have a path. I have a plan. I have something that I could go after and implement. Like, I have direction. That's what I'm talking about. Thrive. Like, in spite of like not having enough money, not having enough time, not having enough connection, not having enough resources, like not having connections, not being able to speak. Let's say they were some of them were very, very shy and they didn't believe in themselves. Some of them had traumatic experiences, where their husband left them, or had other people who traumatic experiences who went through bankruptcy, like what I did. And yet God's strategies still work. God's strategies was still able to work for them. And this is what I mean by, in order for you to fight with your competition as you grow, is you have to hone in on those strengths. What sets you apart? That's what sets me apart. What sets me apart is I use biblical strategies and biblical principles to apply, because I actually believe the word of God, where it says, meditate on the word day and night and you will be successful. I serve a God that doesn't lie. So if he says that, I believe it. And I everything that I learn from the word of God, I apply it to my business and life. And yes, he will ensure that you achieve success. And it might not be, and I have to say this, It might not be quick. There is no get quick solution, microwave solution. This is what a lot of people sell you on, where it's quick, short, yeah, instant results, instant gratification. No, it's a process, it's a journey. Everything that you desire usually comes with challenges, comes with tests, comes with trial and error. And a lot of people don't want to tell you that. But one thing I love about, the Bible is it tells me to teach the truth and tell the truth. And so I will tell you that it's not going to be an easy journey, but I can tell you that I will support you along the way. I will be there to hold your hand and be like, hey, I know this is rough right now, but this is what you can do to help lessen that stress level, or this is what you can do, to help, you know, um, get you to where you actually need to go, so that you can finally obtain that resource that you need, whether if it's land, whether if it's funding, whatever it is. Okay. So anyway, I hope that made sense. But yes, um, competition is going to be fierce, but the good thing about it is, as long as you hone in your strengths and you keep focus on that and not stop trying to be everyone to their mamas, right? Like, actually be like, keep your core. Does that make sense? And hone into that and make sure that you continue to advance that. That's what's going to help set you apart, and that's going to help you fight with the big boys. Okay. And the crazy thing is, a lot of times, especially when I say biblical strategies, it sounds so religious. And so one of the things that I have to say is, whatever methods you have, or whatever thing that maybe makes sense to you, may not make sense with the other people. So one of the things that I've learned, this is completely off the topic, but I want to share this. I think it's very relevant, is be able to articulate your solution or your innovative advantage, or your, what sets you apart, in a way that the person on the other end receiving it actually understands what you're saying, and actually can comprehend it, apply it, and envision for themselves the desired state that you are wanting them to be in, or what they're wanting them to be, and you're helping them see that it's possible. Okay. So as, like, for example, if you guys look at my LinkedIn profile, or if you look at any of my um blogs or advertisements, when it came to my business, I do talk about biblical strategies, but the bulk of it, I'm showing them specifically, like, what those strategies are in plain terms. It's like, when you look at Jesus, he spoke in parables. So he spoke in, like, he used very simple stories to basically make um big concepts, like big kingdom concepts, very plain, so that the average person can understand what they're saying. So that's probably another episode that I could talk about, is how to make it plain for people, and using stories, and how to articulate the value that you could bring to that client. Okay. And last but not least, the last challenge I want to talk about as you grow, that I see time and time again, is going to make sure I'm still recording here because I can't find it. Oh gosh, yeah, time is going by quick, is balancing work and life. Jesus tells his disciples, come with me by yourselves in a quiet place and get some rest. This is so key as you grow, that you make sure you spend some time relaxing and rejuvenating yourself. As a business owner, setting boundaries and taking time to recharge is not just beneficial, but is absolutely necessary for long-term success. So make sure that you schedule in rest. This is huge. If you do not schedule in rest, you're never going to rest. So make sure you put it in. I can't emphasize this enough. You don't want to get burnt out. You don't want to spread out too thin. You want to be able to give your best foot forward, and that requires energy. Okay. So those are the 5 things. I know this last one, I kind of, there's so many, I have so many articles and blogs about resting. So I don't need to go expand on that. I have other episodes about that too. So go ahead and check those out. Now, I'm hoping that these biblical perspectives combined with practical strategies offered a powerful approach to overcoming the challenges of small business growth. And I hope that it also inspired you on your entrepreneurial journey to seek the Bible, read God's word, and see what kind of strategies that the Lord shows you through his word. So I just wanted to thank you again for joining me on the Estherpreneur podcast. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, comment, or even send me a message on my website. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know the challenges you're facing. And just say hi. I want to know who you are. I want to get to know who's listening to me so that I could ensure that I'm providing relevant content for each and every one of you. Well, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, y'all, keep shining, keep growing, and keep thriving. Blessings. Thanks for joining us this week on Estherpreneur. Make sure to visit our website, favorandwealth.com, for more information on our services. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that would help me out too. Also, check out my book, The Ugly Side of Sales, available on Amazon, where I share 7 of my secrets on how to win and grow business the right way. Until next time, keep shining.